Hello everyone. I'm a little nervous. This is my first time recording something like this, so you're gonna have to be really patient with me. But I promised this a long time ago. I actually promised this on when I had my old channel. And I actually promised that for the 200 subscriber mark I would do a Q&A. But the problem was that my computer was having technical difficulties. It wouldn't register my microphone without having some kind of external device attached to it. Long story short, it just took a really long time to get the sound card that I needed in order to do this. So now that I'm finally able to do it, and everyone is at work or at school, and everyone has left me to my peace in my room with my little laptop and my ghetto little tech set up, I finally have this opportunity to answer the questions that you guys asked me a couple months ago. So, I wanted to draw something. I had something in mind, and it was going to answer a few questions. Number one questions were basically, how do you sketch? How do you do line art? How do you color? And how did you design Zethany? That last one, actually, I was excited to answer. So I wanted to draw a picture of Zethany while I explained these things, and I also wanted to answer a few miscellaneous questions that people had. The people were posting like on my YouTube and things, and one of the questions was like, do you plan to do gameplays? Are you gonna have live streams? Do you have a Tumblr or a Instagram or a anything else account? And I'll answer all these kinds of questions later on. I've all written down, so we're just gonna begin. So the first question I should probably answer is, how do you do your sketch work? And normally you don't see this in my speed paints because speed paints like would be 15 times longer if I had to edit down like all of the sketching that I do, because the sketches probably take an hour or two on their own and everything else is like super easy. So I guess we're just gonna start. And how I normally start, the kind of canvas that I use, this big huge white box that you see on this gray platform, is 2000 by 2000 pixels. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, it's 2000 by 2000 pixels, so it's an exact square. It's just plain Jane, like open for any kind of shape or any kind of size of the artwork that I'm gonna do, and I normally zoom into about 50%. So here we go. And how I designed Zethany is she starts out with, oop, that is not the right pixel size that I wanted for my pen. And yes, I just use a pen. Throughout this whole thing, I just use my ink pen, like the default ink pen that comes with the Paint Tool SAI. And that's another question that someone else had, like what kind of softwares do you use? And I use only one kind of software. And I have since I discovered it, and that is Paint Tool SAI. I don't use anything else. I don't use GIMP. I don't use Photoshop. I just use Paint Tool. I have the pirated version, which is, it's kind of cheap, but you know, you can still modify it. You can still like do everything that you would normally. So, and the thing that I'm using is obviously not my mouse, because with a mouse, this is me using my mouse. That's ridiculous. So I was like, oh my god, I can't deal with that. So like a year ago, my dad bought me a $200 medium-sized Intos tablet that you could probably purchase off the internet if you really want to. I got mine at Best Buy. $200 was a lot to me because I was 17 at the time, and my dad paid for it. So, but for a few of you, I'm pretty sure like $200 may not actually be that much. So like that's me using my mouse. I can't do that. I used to just, that was how I drew everything, and I made it work. But this is me using my mouse. See, I'm like right here, I'm barely touching the tablet, but right here I'm really pressing down hard on it, and that's a 3 pixel size if you're wondering. This is at 50%, so we're gonna zoom in. This is 100%. So this is me. This is how I sketch out Zethany at first. She's just a circle, and I do that little T thing. And she starts out kind of rough. And I haven't drawn her in a while, so we don't know. I don't know how this is gonna turn out. But she's kind of got this like weird peanut shape, I want to say. she got this peanut-shaped head. And she just kinda... You just kind of start drawing her. I'm not really sure how to describe it. After a while, I just kind of got a feel for it. Like, I was drawing her over and over obsessively. Like, at some point, she was just a circle with, you know, the little T, and she was just... That was her head shape for a long time. And then, over time, I was like, this is ridiculous. I gotta, you know, amp this up. I'm gonna erase here. So that's basically her head's shape. And this is how I sketch. This is like, I'm not really sure what the method is to this. I'm not really, there's no real method. I don't know. I'm just kind of drawing. I mean, I guess for someone who's never drawn before, or like sat down with a tablet and everything, with really expensive equipment surrounding them or whatever, because I'm so rich I can afford all the expensive equipment. That's a big lie. I have probably $20 to my name. But, I don't know, for this, I just sketch, I just do what comes naturally. Here, I'm gonna draw her nose. Her nose is always aligned with this, like, kind of pointy part of her face. Because that's, like, her cheek. And I don't know, if you've ever seen, like, cartoon rabbits, that's how I don't know. I was imitating, like, kind of a Bugs Bunny kind of feeling. You know, that's how rabbits always have, like, this little cheek. Cartoon bunnies do. Thumper from Bambi, you'll notice. And then I just kind of, for her eyes, I guess that's how I draw her eyes. They're just kind of these weird C shapes. They're almost how I draw G's. That's how I write my G's. That's how I write my C's. So that's kind of like how I'm imagining it. And then her eyes are big ovals. They're not circles. Her eyes are not big circles. That's a circle. This is an oval. Her eye is an oval. Something that I see too often is people draw the circle and then I'm like, nope, that's not her eye shape. Or they draw this little thing to do the catch light and it's kind of like that anime look. But that's not her eye shape. So, and it's important to get down these very little details, especially with any character that you may be drawing, because the slightest, like, the slightest change will make a big difference. Like, if I took her nose, I'm selecting the lasso tool right now, if I took her nose and I moved it around, and I moved it too high, or if I moved it too low, it makes a big difference. So I'm gonna leave her nose right there. So I'm gonna make her eyebrows. Her eyebrows typically have this, like, upbrow, underbrow kind of look, because that's the way that she always looks. I kind of base that off on my own personality, because usually when I'm taking pictures or something, I always put one brow up, one brow down. I just think it's quirky, it's cute, it's stupid. I like the way it looks, especially on Zethany, because she's kind of got this attitude of, what, I'm a bunny rabbit? What of it? I don't know. I can't, that's why I'm not a voice actor for anything. So that's kind of her face. We're gonna clean this up later. This is not gonna be the final product. And then this will be kind of like the skeleton. I like to call this the skeleton of the drawing. You put these little joints down. And that's the way that her neck is going to look. It might have to size down her head, might have to shrink it a little bit, but again, this is not what the final product is. This is gonna look much better when we're done with it. Where to draw her shoulders? Right here. Her shoulders are kind of wide from her head because she is a heavier set person. And by heavy set, I don't just mean that she's like fat or anything. I just mean like her bone structure is big. That's the way she was born. And just by default, she has always looked that way. That's how I imagine her. And all these little details go into how she looks. So her shoulders. And then we're gonna draw, typically I would draw her ears, but since we're not drawing her without the beanie, her ears will look a little bit different. So before we do that, we gotta draw her beanie, and this is how we draw her beanie. It's just a line across the head, and then these little, like, bumps that appear over her head when you put on the beanie, because some beanies have this, like, lip that's kind of around just as you're putting it on, but I know a lot of beanies don't have that. My own beanie doesn't even do that, but it's a cute way to to show where the beanie begins and where it stops, and how it's hugging onto her head. But yeah. I also apologize if I'm really nervous and you can tell it in my voice. You can hear all the ups and downs and the shaking. It's because I just haven't done anything like this in a really long time. I have done a video where I spoke before, but I haven't done that in a really long while. It was probably a few years ago. So yeah, that's how her beanie looks right now. And then we're gonna draw her ears. Typically her ears would begin somewhere up here. You know, somewhere right there. And they would just come down. They would just come down kind of like hair does. But because her beanie is kind of overlapping her ears, we have to begin where the ears would escape the beanie. And then I typically don't show where the ears are separated. Like if you really want to, that's kind of like where the ears would be separated. But because we're not going to see that anyway, it doesn't really matter. We're going to erase this part. And this is just how I sketch. This is how everything begins. It just looks really crappy. It looks like this, and really big, not the right tool. Really big projects will take me days to complete. Like my last speed paint. It took me a day, but I was really like not moving from the computer. I was really determined to get it done. We're adding more emphasis to the lip that's on her beanie. But things like that, if I really want to, I can get a really big project done in one day, but that's only because I've set deadlines for myself, and I had a lot of homework to do that day. So something like this will probably only take me about maybe 5 minutes. If I really if I did it really fast and I was really determined about it and it didn't take any breaks, it would take me only about 5 minutes or 10 minutes at the very most. But these are how my sketches are done. They take forever. But that's I guess that's kind of like what you know, most artists are used to taking like months for their art to get done. By the way, now we're drawing the stripes on her beanie. Again, they're gonna look kind of crappy, but that's just the way that it's gonna have to go. It's just the rules of how I draw my characters. I know everyone else, like more experienced artists, are like, oh my goodness, she's taking such a long time. But it's like, that's just how it is. I can't draw any other way. So then, yeah, take that into consideration when you're doing your own artwork, because no one's going to be able to draw the same way. I don't care what your art teacher tells you. Everyone draws differently at their own different pace, and that's just how it is. I've never met anyone else who was just able to completely just copy someone else's artwork without even hardly trying. No one popped out the womb talented. We all had to learn at our own pace. Some of us are 40 years old and are still learning, and some of us might be 10 years old and got it down. We have our style down, we gotta worry about it, but no matter what, you'll always be learning. But back to the sketch. This is her, actually no, that's the way I used to draw her. Her collar is turtleneck. She is wearing a turtleneck, so kind of do this. This has been a long time since I've drawn the actual turtleneck on Zethany. The thing that she's best known for is her beanie and her turtleneck, and they both have stripes on them. So that's kind of how I do my turtleneck for her. I'm just going to do the stripes. And we're not going to draw the rest of her body because that would take way too much time. That's more speed paint, like, fulfilling. But this is kind of like, oh, and her whiskers. Her whiskers never touch her face. That's something that is really important to understand, is whiskers never touch her face. It's just no matter what angle you're looking at her from, if she's looking up or down, if she's looking left or right, if you're looking at her from far away, if you're looking at her from really close up, she never ever ever has her whiskers touching her face. I don't know why that is, it just looks nice to me that way. You can draw her however way you want, I really don't care, but that's how I draw her. And she kind of has this, like, that's not a good smile, but she does have, like, the 3 smile. Have you ever, like, seen people do that? That's the way she smiles. She does not have just the typical you know, half C shape, I guess. She does not have that. She has kind of that little indent right there at the lip, and that's just how she's drawn. I kind of like that. Sometimes though, I will just put the little smirk in there because the 3 doesn't exactly like fit it. Like for me right there, that doesn't fit. So maybe we'll do that for now because it just kind of makes the look work. And I'd say that we're done with this sketch right here. So we're gonna move on to line art. And this is how I do my line art. All I'm doing is I will typically make a new layer. If you know Paint Tool, I just make a new layer and I put it at 50% or approximately. Right now it's at 45%, but it doesn't really matter. And then I click the line art layer. I don't just make another layer, like I'm select the black color right now that I have in my palette. I could do this. I'm just using a regular ink pen. That's just how, and but the problem with this is you don't get these really clean lines. I mean, these are nice lines, but you can notice how, like, right here, that's not clean. That's not as smooth as I want to. I mean, some artworks I will do that if I want that look, but that's not what I'm going for when it comes to Zethany and any characters that I want to have a really solid cartoony look. I always get out the line art layer and I select. I almost always will select the number 3 size. And then I begin just out of here. Normally I begin right here when I'm drawing Zethany and her beanie. And this is extremely helpful, especially if you're not that used to doing really clean line artwork. Paint Tool kind of lets you cheat in this way, just letting you drag your the line art wherever you want it to go, and then you can go back and change it a little bit if you really wanted to. This helps you work faster and easier and not harder. Because if you're like me and you constantly have things to be drawing every single day, you don't really have the time to sit there and make sure the line art is perfect. But I guess some people, it's not a problem. For some people, they're like, are you kidding me? Line art's like the easiest part of the whole thing. For me, it's probably one of the hardest, and it takes the most time besides the sketch. And you can select the pressure pen next to when you have a line art layer open, and you just select one of these little nodes. I think they're green. I think the color is green right there. And if you drag far away from it, it gets thinner, but if you drag towards it and then away, it gets thicker. So I like to have a little bit thin in the places where it naturally would be thin. Then I'm just gonna do the rest of her beanie. And this just takes, again, like the sketch, it just takes a little bit of skill, it takes a little bit of time. You just have to sit there with the tool and figure it out for yourself. There's no way that someone can just put this information into your head and instantly make you talented at this kind of thing. You just have to sit there with it and you have to practice. If you want to get good at a certain thing or a certain skill, you have to do it. You just have to. Like, I remember wanting to play guitar, and I wanted to be really good at it because my dad was in guitar, and I wanted so badly to just already know how to play guitar, but the reality is I had to sit down and I had to actually learn it. But then later on I actually decided that guitar's not for me, because the amount of work that you had to put in to learn guitar and then the payoff, it wasn't enough for me. But that's how you find out what you're talented about, you know? Some people, drawing will never be their thing. They'll never enjoy drawing, and that's perfectly fine. And for some people, they're hearing me talk about this guitar story and they're like, are you kidding? Guitar is life. It's so easy. And right now I'm just selecting the sketch layer, and because I really like these eyebrows, I don't want them to change. I don't want to risk just losing them. I selected them with the purple select tool that you will find at the side of your paint tool. For those who know what I'm talking about, but for those who don't, you have no idea what I'm talking about. So I'm selecting Control C and then Control V, and that's creating a new layer. And now I have the eyebrows all on their own. I'm going to turn down the brightness so that they're completely black. And now we have the eyebrows from the sketch layer, and they're with the line art. Also, I group my sketch and my line artwork together in different folders, just so that I don't lose track of what I'm doing. I don't draw on the wrong line art layer or something like that. So we're just going to continue with this. And I had a few more questions that I was going to answer. Let's try and actually answer them right now. Let me see, where is it? I have it written down here in my post-it notes. Will you do gameplays? That's something that I've had a few people ask me, and the answer is, I hope. I really would like to. I mean, the only problem is I live in a full house. I live in this teeny tiny little apartment with 5 other people. I share a incredibly small room with my little sister. And by little, she's only 3 years younger than me, so I'm 18 and she is, what does that make her? 15? I keep forgetting her age. She's gonna watch this video and then hit me over the head because she's like, you forgot my age again. But she, we live in a very cramped space in a very bad part of town, so we don't, like, and we live in Arizona, so it's just, it's insanity. There's too much going on outside, there's too much crime going outside to just go outside and enjoy a good, healthy, sunshiny morning, and it's too freaking hot. It's just too hot all the time. It's September right now, and it's the 12th of September right now, so it's really cold in some places, like in Ireland, it's supposed to be freezing cold, but for me, it was 104 yesterday, and I had to take the bus. So we can't really go outside, too much crime, there's not enough space for everyone to enjoy, like, living in the same space. Also, like, my little sister hates it whenever I'm speaking, or doing anything noisy while she's in the room, and right now she's at school, so I'm taking this opportunity to record something with my voice in it, talking over it, otherwise she would be extremely displeased and she would throw me out of the room and she'd be very upset with me for the rest of the day. So instead of doing that, I just waited until she was at school, and I don't have school on Tuesdays. I don't have classes on Tuesdays, so I decided this is the perfect opportunity to do something like this. So that's my situation with videos to begin with. So doing gameplay, doing Let's Plays is going to be a little bit more challenging, especially how I have absolutely no money, and I really wanted to draw and do live streams where I'm drawing. I really wanted to do gameplays such as, like, Before the Storm. Life is Strange Before the Storm just barely came out, and I was thinking, oh, that would be really cool and something really interesting to do for my first Let's Play, but I don't have any money. I have, like, my bare minimum money, and then I don't have any money after that, so I can't spend any money on new gameplays. Regarding equipment or actual games to play, I can't spend money in that regard unless it's like a life or death situation. But I've had a few people buy me video games in the group chat. The group chat is full of wonderful, amazing people where we all love each other and we give each other things, and it's amazing. And that's the only reason I have, like, any games now, is because most of my friends have just bought me games. They're just kind of like, hey, you want Stardew Valley? I bought it for you. Or I managed to save up enough unimportant money to get Stardew Valley. And that's my situation with gameplays, is it's a very weird situation, and everything how I'm gonna explain to you guys. Oops, I selected the wrong tool. I selected the straight liner and not the curving one. But most of the ways I'm gonna answer you guys' questions is it's gonna begin with, it's very complicated. Which leads me to my next question that someone asked me was, do you have an Instagram, do you have a Tumblr, do you have a blah 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 blah? And I will tell you what I do have, and all those links are in the description below of this video. It's really, like, I have basically everything except for like an Instagram, a Snapchat. I don't have those things because I just don't have a use for them, and I don't find Instagram to be particularly useful with artwork. I just don't like it. I never received any attention from putting my artwork on Instagram. I know that's not how it works for everybody else, but for me it just didn't work, and I didn't want to waste my time with it. And last time that I actually used my Instagram for something like that, someone stole a bunch of artwork from me, and I was like, this can't be. The person didn't get away with it, but I was really upset, and I decided, like, you know what, maybe Instagram is not for me. But if you're ever wondering, like, oh, does she have a Tumblr? Does she have a blah blah blah? Does she have a DeviantArt or whatever? I will always post it in the description below. Everything that you need to know about every video that I've ever made, or anything else, it's in the description. I promise. And on every other place that I've ever posted anything, like Tumblr, you will always find links to my Twitter, to my DeviantArt, to anything that I have, and it's there. It's quick, easy access. But I do most of my artwork and most of my activity is done on DeviantArt. So if you ever just want to go to a place where I am constantly on, it's my main social hub. DeviantArt is where I mostly go. I think I'm done here with the line art. So if I just make sure that if I got everything correct, I just do that. I turn the sketch line art off and on, make sure I didn't miss anything, and I did not miss anything from what I can understand. I feel like I'm missing something about her, but I can't quite put my finger on it. I guess I'm just gonna have to live with it, and then later on I'll realize it. So what I do next is the thicker line art layer, and that's just gonna go all the way around. It's not gonna go in between, it's just gonna go all the way around, and it's gonna give it kind of this sticker look. It's gonna make it pop a little bit better, and I like that look, so we're gonna do that. And this is just more of how I do my line art. Actually, hold on. What's another question that someone had asked me? Will you do gameplays? Do you have an account on other websites? Here is 2 questions that I get asked all the time, and it really, really surprises me, is what is Animatrix, and where did Animatrix come from? These are fun questions to ask because I get to answer them all day long from all kinds of different people. I'm just kidding, I love all of you. Please don't ever think that I hate you because you guys ask too many questions. I love answering your questions. But Animatrix, what it is it's basically a little story idea I had while I was, well, how it began, I should probably go all the way back to the beginning, was a year ago I went into my Undertale phase. I was like, I loved Undertale so much. I had watched Jacksepticeye play it, and I was crazy. I loved it so much. I loved the characters. I loved everything about it. So then I went online and I was like, I want to draw everyone's Undertale OCs. So I went onto Facebook and I saw this, the Undertale, like, fan art kind of page, and I was like, oh, that looks so cool. And there was one person who drew their character. It was this little, like, water drop person. It was actually kind of adorable. I really loved it, and I was like, oh, can I draw her? And the creator of this OC was like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And I drew her, and she's like, wow, that's amazing. And she friended me. I did not expect her to friend me. I didn't actually expect anything in return. By the way, we're done with the line art, so I'm going to go on to show you guys how I'm going to color this. We're going to start with the select tool. We're going to start at like 50, and we're just going to go like this. This will help later on with the coloring process, you will see in a minute. Sorry I keep saying I've heard someone had complained about that. I was actually like, oh whoops, I do say that a lot. I'm gonna try and refrain to not say it so much, so I'm sorry, I apologize big time. But with Aquarius was the name of this character, so this person was like, yeah, you're so good, we should become friends. So we were friends on Facebook for a while, and she was like, oh yeah, I got a bunch of other friends, let's go and create like a Undertale like OC Facebook page. So she just kind of shoved all of our friends, well, I had no friends, all of her friends into one chat box, and we were just kind of like, hi, hello, I don't know who any of you people are. And over time we started introducing each other to our characters, and we were like, oh wow, these are really creative, this is all amazing, this is, I've never seen all these creative, amazing characters before, I've never been part of such an amazing group of people like this before. And we started making up little backstories that went along with our Undertale OCs, and then we were, at some point we were like, oh, we could actually turn this into like our own story, like a legitimate story outside of the world of Undertale. God damn it. I have to go back and change something with the line art. I have to make the pixel lines here a little bit thinner. That's fixed now, I think. Yeah. So, where was I? So with this idea in mind where we're like, oh, we can make a story outside of the Undertale universe, we had an idea to do that, but we were kind of like, I don't know what to do with that at first. Like, what kind of universe would this be? And then I started stringing a few stories together, and they're like, wow, you can make a real book out of this. This is amazing. Look at the universe that you put these characters in. They could all be best friends and stuff and like live together in this little town. And that's kind of like how it started. I was like, oh, I could make a real story out of this, and it could get kind of popular, and everyone was like, yeah, do it. So that's just how it began, and we didn't really have a name for the story for a long time before. Sometime in August, we were just like, oh, I have an amazing idea having to do with this other element that goes along to the story. We really got into it. Like, it's a really fleshed out story now. It's so ridiculous. It takes so much time to actually like understand, get a hold of. I wrote down like thousands and thousands of notes for the story so that everyone can understand it, and if they forget something, they go back and look at the concept notes and it just makes sense again. But that's kind of like how it began. It was just this fun thing for us all to participate in, and we loved the way that the story was coming together. We really we appreciated the hard work that everyone was putting into it. We made characters that didn't really belong to anyone as an OC, but we did create characters that would add on to the story. It became this really emotional like journey to create this really in-depth original, unique, magical story about these people living in a world ruled by basically these hungry, horrible snatchers that wanted to consume everyone's magic. And it became a thing. It just did. I'm not really sure how to put it. We just started like sharing artwork from that. We got really hyped up about it. And that's just kind of the way it went. And now it's just become a thing. It's become a little bit bigger and bigger every time that we add something to it. And we're still talking about it. I know that I don't really put a lot of, you don't see a lot of publishing come from it. You don't see me do a lot on it or talk about it too much, I guess. But that's just the way it transformed. It became something that is very active to us. Like, it's a very present thing that just... by the way, if you're wondering what I'm doing right now, I'm looking for another picture of Zethany to base her colors off of, because I had forgotten what her colors actually looked like. I feel really bad about this. Here we go. These are her color palettes. So what am I doing? I'm taking this gray, moving it over here. So that's kind of like what Animatrix is. If you really want to know more like serious, in-depth story stuff about it, you're just gonna have to like do your own research. I don't really feel like explaining the entire plot right now. I'm actually kind of tired of talking because I've barely gotten out of bed. I've barely moved around. It's still early in the morning for me, and it's currently like 12:45 p.m. in the afternoon. But anyway, that's kind of like what Animatrix is. It's this beautiful story that sprouted from an Undertale fandom thing and became its own thing. What was the branching question that came into that? I can't really remember. Yeah, where did Animatrix come from? It was just an Undertale thing. It was just a bunch of people with their goofy little Undertale OCs, and it became a thing over time. That's just how that's how I can answer that. I mean, it's really hard to explain it without click the wrong button. It's hard to explain it without giving every single detail. But if you want every single detail, like I said, you're just gonna have to do your own research for that. I apologize. By the way, since we're only working on this big of a canvas, I'm just gonna shrink it down. Crop selection. So now we are at height of 607 pixels and a width of 450 pixels. So you can see how like eventually the drawing comes down to something actually kind of small, but I like to have this big huge canvas to work on that gives me a lot of leeway. So right now we've done our sketching, we've done our line art, and we've done our coloring, and that's just how I do it. I did forget a little bit of tiny details that I should probably add right now. She's got these little ridges on her turtleneck that are really important because they kind of give off that signature turtleneck look. She does look a little bit different in this drawing, but that's because I'm not really trying that hard. It's just to give you guys an idea of how I'm drawing her. So I guess we'll move on to the shading part of things, and this should be the last thing that I have to do before I can close out this video. So this is how she's colored. By the way, her beanie and her sweater are not the same colors. I've seen so many people draw like either these green shades also on her beanie as well as her sweater, and I'm like, no, her sweater is got no color. Her sweater is actually 2 different shades of gray, while her beanie are 2 different shades of green. This is a very, very dark green, and this is a very light, kind of mucky green. So those colors are different. They are absolutely different. They are not the same thing. I have no idea how many times I've seen that where I'm like, no, it's not the same color. These are different. Her nose is pink, her eyes are blue. Her eyes are a very particular shade of blue. They look kind of stand-outish. They don't really fit with her design just yet, but you'll see in a minute once we start shading, which I'm actually going to do right now. I'm gonna select her beanie. All the colors on her beanie. I'm gonna clear up these tiny gaps that are here. So now we got the beanie selected. I'm going to select my airbrush tool, make it kind of big, and I'm going to use it just in the spaces I know that the shadow would rationally be. And I'm going to erase where the light is coming in. So, and that's kind of like what it's going to look like. It's not a lot. It's a very tiny detail, but it makes a big difference. And then I'm going to do another layer where I just do the light. And it's kind of strong for a white light, so I'm going to move it all the way down to about 50%. And again, it's not a big, huge detail, but these little itty-bitty details will add up in the long run and make it look a lot more three-dimensional. Make it look more sticker-like. I like to have big poppy sticker kind of looks to my characters when I'm drawing them. I know that's not how everyone will want their drawings to look, and that's perfectly fine. I'm just showing you guys how I do them. And then I have to do a little bit of shadow right underneath her beanie, because if you've ever seen the way a beanie works on someone's head before, you notice that there is that lip does create a little bit of a shadow. So I'm going to try and get it just right. It does take a little bit of back and forth. See how I'm erasing and then I go back, I'm undoing. I'm just trying to get it just the way I want it. And that might be enough. We don't do any more shading on her face because we want the shading to be in the places you don't really want attention brought, because darkness works kind of like this, where you notice how right here is a thinner line and this is a thicker line. The eyebrows are thicker, the nose is thicker, the smile is thicker, but these lines like right here, these lines right here, you don't really want attention brought to those parts where it's thinner, because that bigger, thicker lines will actually bring more attention to a character. Thinner lines like right here, these are thin black lines, you don't really want too much attention brought to them, but you do want attention brought to the lip, where that's a thicker line. So darkness works in that matter, but it also works like right here, it's a darker portion and your attention is less brought to that area, it's more brought to this brighter, like heftier region. And since her face is going to need a lot of attention, you want almost no shadows in these areas. But again, this is just how I'm doing it. You do not have to do it this way. This is just how I personally do my own artwork. So I'm going to put the shadows right here, and then I'm going to erase, because that's where the shadow I think would rationally be on a cartoon. And then we're going to do a little bit more shadow right here, right there. And then I'm going to take my pixels, my 50 pixel size eraser, and then erase right there. So the shadow is always cupping like near her body and away, because they expect that the light is kind of coming from around her like this. There's no particular, it's not coming from right here, it's not coming from right here or here really harshly, it's just kind of around her. It's a very neutral lighting. But you'll see like other drawings where I do like maybe there's fire right here and everywhere else is darkness. The light is rationally only coming from there, so you want a lot of light just focusing on those regions. Right here we're gonna add the shadow from underneath her chin, her very curved chin. I'm gonna erase. So we got that shade right there. And then we're going to take the shadow that's kind of coming from her turtleneck and narrow that down as well. So there's a little bit of shadow, but there's not a lot, but it's like I said, these little details will add up in the future. In the very near future. We take these parts of her sweater and we're going to put shadows on there. Now, we don't really need a lot of shadows for this, because it's one of those regions where you want more focus brought to it. But we do want shadows like right here, because that's where her face is kind of overcasting those parts. So we got the shadows right there. And I don't think there's any shadows that I want to place around here, because everywhere else has like kind of a light coming in. And these ears have shadow, and the sweater doesn't, because the ears are behind the sweater. Same with the beanie, the beanie is getting more traction here because it is behind the ears, which are behind the sweater. It seems really technical, it's really not. You want to put it that way. And then I'm just going to shrink down the canvas size a little bit more because I want more focus brought on this area. Her face is a little bit elongated, but I guess that kind of fits the look that she's going for, this kind of like what you want kind of look. And then we could do, oh, I forgot her eyes. Look at me, I'm forgetting things. I forgot her eyes, and her eyes are actually, I'm not using black. I never use black, and I'm never using white on these portions because I want her, this is dark blue, I'm working with dark blue. And then I'm using very, very, very sky light blue on her eyes. Kind of do it wherever she's looking. The light comes in onto her eyes wherever she's looking. So if she were looking this direction, the light might come in from this side instead of this side. So that's how I'm doing it. and it does add a little bit of contour to her eyes. It does add that little bit of definition, and the darker portion kind of works better with these darker colors, and the lighter portion is working better with her very, very light gray / white kind of look. Also, you'll notice she is not actually the color white. I actually wanted her to be white. Her official color for her design is white fur, but her eyes are actually true white, while the rest of her is a very, very, very light gray. And that's just to create this kind of contrast between her eyes and her actual body, her actual fur. Because I didn't want her eyes to just morph in with the rest of her body. It would have kind of very so slightly took away from that, and I don't want to take away from her eye shape, because her eye shape is very expressive. You'll notice if you're a cartoonist and you actually know these little things that I'm talking about, you know how the little itty bitty details create so much. I was actually thinking about this thing when I was watching the shorts to Villainous, is these little tiny details that really emphasize on a character, and if you got it wrong, it just wouldn't look the same. So I'm gonna do a little bit of just background art, just to kind of emphasize on her. It makes it look pretty. It makes the things that you want to draw just look a little bit more appealing. Like if you want people to really, when they see your artwork, they're gonna go, oh wow, so many pretty colors, I'm gonna click on that and see what that's about. It's kind of like what the method is to all of this. And then I can do other things to it. I'm not really sure that I want to, just because I think this is pretty much done. But I like to add, concerning the colors, the reason I used blues for the background is because her eyes are these colors, and I just thought that it looked nice this way. And I think that pretty much does it. I don't think I have any more questions that you guys wanted me to answer. Where did Animatrix come from? What is Animatrix? Do you have a insert fill in the blank account anywhere? Will you do gameplays? How do you design Zethany? How do you color? How do you line art? How do you sketch? Also, how did you shade? This is also, that's an added bit I just wanted to put in there, is how I shade things, how I make them look nicer. This is not one of my nicer drawings, it's just kind of a sketch, just to give you an idea. Ooh, something else I have forgotten. You notice I probably have forgotten a lot of things in this, and I'll look back on it and go, wow, I'm an idiot. But there's these little ridges on her beanie as well, just like there are on her turtleneck. It emphasizes the lip a little bit more. And that's just the way, I like the way that looks. It adds tiny details to a very broad picture, and that's what makes it look interesting. So if you guys had any other questions, you can leave them in the comment section below, or you can go onto my DeviantArt and ask these questions. Just be sure to like kind of tell me, oh, I want this in another answering your questions YouTube video. I don't know what I'm gonna call this just yet, but if you would like your questions featured in a YouTube video, I'll try my best to get to all of them. You can go on my Tumblr, you can go on my DeviantArt, you can go on my Twitter, you can ask all these questions that you want. I have no restriction to them. I'll answer like any kind of question, all the way from like what's your favorite drink to what's your favorite dog breed. I don't care, just as long as it's not evasive, like I don't know, what color is your underwear right now, like those kinds of questions. Please don't ask. Those are very like not okay questions. I won't answer them. I won't even pay them the time of day. Those are not nice questions. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's all I had for this video. I hope I answered a few of your questions. I hope it was interesting to watch me draw, watch me ramble, and I hope this is a nice little breakup from the normal just speed paint video every day. I'm gonna try and do one of these once a week if I have questions to answer. I'm gonna try my best to start up some gameplays, and maybe we can get something interesting out of those. And if you have any questions or suggestions for other games that we could possibly do, maybe things that don't cost that much, like $10, $15, something below $20 or $30, we could probably do something like that. I'm gonna try my best to get to those, and it should be fun, it should be interesting. I'm gonna try my best to fuel this YouTube channel with whatever we can, so I'm gonna say goodbye right now and stop rambling. So yeah. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!